Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of Zane's View. Zane's View is going to be a review of whatever's interesting. It could be science, history, philosophy, music, religion, whatever. Now today, the first episode of Zane's View will be on reviewing Chris Benoit, his life as a wrestler and as a person. Now I'll be doing the wrestling standpoint first before I will be doing the person. This will be a two-part series. The first part will be the wrestling and the second part will be the person. So let's dive into it as the wrestler. Having a little backstory of myself, I watched wrestling from a very young age. I'm a bit old. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, when I was just a little kid, I'd seen wrestlers like Mr. Bob Backlund, which the Off the Rope show talks about, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage. One of my favorite was Brutus the Barber Beefcake, as well as Roddy Piper, and many others like Superfly Jimmy Snuka. I'm a little nervous, excuse me. But essentially, one of my most favorites was, at the time of WWF, or WWF, was Mr. Bob Backlund. At that time, he was known as Bob Backlund. As you know, he changed his way he was presented in the 90s as Bob Backlund to Mr., especially when he had those matches against Bret the Hitman Hart and several other matches as well. But going back to what I'm saying, for me, it was him. I enjoyed how he wrestled. Personality-wise, I don't really remember that much, but I did like how he acted as a wrestler. Now, comparing that to Chris Benoit's rise, what I understand, and I say this clearly, I am not a great source of information. I don't know it all. So, if you bash me, I understand. If I get something wrong, just understand I don't know it all. But essentially speaking, Chris Benoit, by the early 80s to near about 1984 to 1985, went to the Hart Dungeon because he was from Ontario, Canada, I believe. He stayed there for a while. Then he went on the road to New Japan. Of course, there are many other places. I believe he also went to Mexico as well. But he did go to New Japan. He studied the dojos there. And he stayed there for a little while, came back around 1986 and 1987. Then he went back again, and then he really began to get a little momentum in New Japan, became the New Japan Junior Heavyweight Champion. I believe that's how they say it. He stayed there for several years before he went to ECW, and then had that infamous, what I had seen, the Sabu-Chris Benoit match, where Sabu basically snapped his neck because he didn't want to do a suplex normally. He just wanted to land in a different direction. I guess he wanted to land on his stomach. But essentially, he had his first mark there as being a dangerous wrestler. He went and kept running in ECW until eventually he left ECW to go to WCW. I believe that was around 1994 to 1995. He stayed there for quite a while. That's where he met his second wife, because he was married previously before that, from what I understand. I don't know if they got married in between the time of ECW to WCW, his first wife, but he did get married. Now, from WCW, he jumped to WWF, WWE / at the time. And that was roughly around the 2000s. And I think just shy of WrestleMania 20, no, sorry, not 20. WrestleMania 15, I believe. He already did negotiations by WrestleMania 16. He was in a match with Chris Jericho, who he knew, and won the Intercontinental Championship. And what I understand, which is for me, having the matches with Kurt Angle. Well, I'll say this. By 1990 to 91 is when I stopped watching wrestling. I was very busy at the time. And by 2002, I picked it back up. I missed a huge chunk of Raw and when they formed SmackDown. But after picking up to 2002 and seeing how Chris Benoit was, I myself thought that he was a bit of a show-off. I didn't know any better at the time. But as time went on and I watched, and by the time of the WrestleMania 20, I realized he was a very good wrestler, and I did like him quite a lot. Now, that little backstory of Chris Benoit, I'm going to say this. As far as my interpretation of what his life was, not talking about the person yet. This is just about the wrestler. As a wrestler, if he had not died, unfortunately, he would have been one of the all-time greats. It is very clear as a wrestler, he was that good. He had out of 5 tools, they say this in wrestling, out of 5 tools, I believe he had about 3 to 4 of them. And these 5 tools are physique, which you can be a tall man or a short man. At the time when he came in, WWE finally started seeing that smaller men with good physiques were no better than men who were large, with big physiques. Mic skills. You have to be able to talk on the mic. Having charisma. That's not talking about in the ring. Just having a presence about you outside the ring to draw people in. Having a ring presence, as far as I can see. People who see you in the ring could just know that he's a great wrestler. Could just feel it, not just by the performance in the wrestling, just how you hold yourself in the ring. That's how I see it. Finally, when it came to telling a story in the ring, which means you and your opponent put out a good show to put the people in the seats and to have the people at home watch. What Chris Benoit had a very good physique. He was having a good presence in the ring. People just knew he was good, even without him having to do anything yet. And finally telling a story. When it comes to charisma, he had some, but I believe it really got much better by the time of WrestleMania 20. He really had more of a charisma that people just noticed because he was being prominently featured. When it comes to mic skills, he had some mic skills. I believe it got a little better after WrestleMania 20. I believe the mic skills were better than the charisma. So I think he had about roughly 3 to 4 of the 5 tools needed. Now, my feeling about this, he really would have gone into the Hall of Fame when everything was said and done, when he retired, if he had not died. He would have gone into the Hall of Fame flat out. When it comes to how his fellow wrestlers saw him, he flat out was considered a very good man to work with, respectful. Yes, I know there was a lot of things where they said he acted very strangely. I won't get into that into the next video, but essentially if I'm going by just a wrestler, he was highly respected by everyone in there. He was very respectful of anyone there. In fact, when there was a lot of talent there, when the talent acted very disrespectful or somewhat disrespectful to older wrestlers, didn't matter if they were good or bad, it made no difference. For anyone who'd already been in business for quite a while, he took it upon himself to really teach them a lesson. If anyone's seen the Larry King interview in 2007 after it happened, I don't know when it happened, maybe about a month or 2 afterwards, when it was, I believe Triple H was there, I'm not sure, but I know Vince McMahon was there, John Cena was there, Chris Jericho was there, Erwin R. Scheitzer, I don't know the man's real name, and Ted DiBiase Sr. They all said that he was a very respectful man that truly cared about the business and cared about his fellow wrestlers. He wanted to make sure he did a good job as a wrestler, representing in the ring and out of the ring when he was in character. He didn't screw around. He always tried to do the right thing. And by my perspective, going by just as a wrestler standpoint, he was a great, great wrestler. And now, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be seeing part 2 next. I hope you liked the first installment of Zane's View. I'm going to be doing hopefully more soon. I'm hoping to give information. I really hope I didn't bore you with this. I hope I did pretty well. This is my first video putting on YouTube, so thank you very much, and you have a good night.